Live. Hey Nick, how's it going?
Hey, Kestutis. Everything is fantastic. Glad to be here.
Oh yeah, how so? Tell me about it.
Well, I'm enjoying being in San Diego and checking out the city and the West Coast in general. Love the weather, the vibes, the people here. So, yeah.
What do you like the most about San Diego?
Well, the weather, I think the beach is
The
pretty
weather,
amazing.
yeah.
And, yeah, I think the energy is good too. Like, there's an energy of people doing whatever they want.
People doing whatever they want. It's so much more chill, right? So when you live in a southern part of California, and you have a choice between LA and San Diego, one of them is an insane choice
Yeah.
from my perspective. But for somebody else, is insane would be my way of living insane. In the peace and quiet, that's what I prefer. So, all right. So, what brought you to San Diego?
Well, I've been on a travel for the last half year where I've been exploring different countries and different places where I might want to live, so yeah, like I've been I spent a fair bit of time in Mexico and in Guatemala, and I was thinking maybe spending part of my time there, and now I'm in California to kind of. Just to explore how's the startup environment here, like what kind of communities are here. You guys tend to be ahead of the curve in a lot of things, culturally, in startups.
I see technologically as well.
Yeah.
Like that's where all the cauldron of intelligence being boiled.
Well, here, other places in the world as well, but I feel that now that I'm in this part of the world, I need to see what's up. And, this is a domain that I've been kind of engaged with for a number of years, and I'm looking at moving deeper into. So
Okay, so let's talk about what you do, and that ties back in with freedom with technology, because I know that you are super into technology, and you one of those believers that technology will set us free.
yeah, so I guess I would fall into the category of a crypto guy. Nah, I don't want to put myself in a category like that, but the last 4 years I've been working with blockchain and crypto. So the first crypto company I was working with, or should I say blockchain, was a company that was developing, among other things, blockchain-based voting systems for democratic elections.
Okay.
So that got me super excited just because, I'm a kind of person who enjoys looking at society, looking at the meta perspective and seeing what is it that we can improve here. We have a lot of suffering, a lot of things that are not going well, and we have other things that are going better in other parts of the world compared to others. So one of those problems that I identified, also traveling to places like Asia and South America compared to Europe, was problems of corruption and bad governance. So the idea that you can put democratic voting systems on a blockchain, basically that means, in its highest potential, the way I see it, is that you can have systems for voting on your favorite politician.
Right, but there's a little flaw with that. You know what? Because you can't rig the system anymore.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to want that.
Yeah, that's right. Like I think a lot of people who's following the blockchain and crypto field see this. They see that are powers fighting against this development.
Right, yeah.
That wasn't so much the challenge with this company. I think the challenges were also technological, and I think that's also something very important to realize when you look at crypto and blockchain. So, if you want to make a voting system on a blockchain, you can create something where people would ideally be able to vote every week or every month, or they would be able to delegate votes to their friends so that their friends who are expert on a given topic could vote for them, or that you can vote from your phone instead of going with a paper ballot once every 4 years, which is a system we've had for like 200 years. And our society is radically different now than it was back then. So the problem, though, that we found out, and that I found out working with that and investigating it, is that you can make secure blockchains, but the there's vulnerabilities in the clients. So, for instance, the voting machines. There's been a number of accusations of voter fraud in the United States in the past elections, and a lot of that has had to do with voting machines that are electronic, where it seems that there has been some backdoors, a possibility that someone changed the election results. The same could happen with any blockchain-based voting system, because the blockchain can be secure, but you don't necessarily have the secure client, and system, computer, or mobile phone that's voting.
Yeah. The question I have for you, will that, all of this beautiful thing that you're describing, matter in post-apocalyptic world?
Well, that's a great question. So we talked about this a fair bit, right? And when I look at where we might end up as a world, I think it could be beautiful. It could be an apocalyptic world, or it could be somewhere in between. And I think
I'm somewhere in between guy as well.
Yeah. Well, so I think if we end up having a milder version of a post-apocalyptic world, if, say, the central supply chains and grids and so on shut down, but there's still electricity, there's still internet or whatever, you can still have decentralized societies, or even small societies that are still distributing or having their information on blockchains or on secure systems, and communicating with others across the globe.
Absolutely.
In fact, we might even need that.
We will need that, I think, because when you collapse a big state, it collapses in a tiny one. So, I mean, I lived through a Soviet Union collapse, so I know what I'm talking about. I'm saying. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I know pretty much what's going to happen. Just like that big cheese collapsed and it just fell onto little gangs, and little tribes. So I think we may go back to this tribal societies, meaning this like small communities, and they're living together and helping each other. Because of course, where are you going to get the food from unless you collaborate with each other, So we're going to go back to village times again. But I think right now, this time, we're going to go back there with technology on top of that. We never experienced what that's like when we can be connected with technology and still live at this harmonious way with nature, these little communities. And of course, voting system over there would be amazing. And voting systems, when you have these types of communities and they connected all over the world, and you have a voting system that cannot be rigged, I think that has huge value, because the merit and the value creation is probably going to be promoted rather than talking and rhetoric and all that nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one scenario. And part of me hopes that a variant of that happens. There's also another scenario that I think is very likely. It's that we go further along the path of totalitarianism, and some countries or regions become very totalitarian. There's increased surveillance, as is happening right now, and even control of how we do our transactions and what we buy and so on. And so you could have, with cryptocurrency and these kinds of systems that are decentralized and very hard to shut down, you could actually have alternative ways of transacting and of organizing, which are immutable, meaning that they're safe from, or relatively speaking, safe from hackers or governments.
And we never seen the world like that before, where you can have decentralized technology, right? And also, when people live in a way that is like olden ways, right? The problem was back then is because you weren't able to stop from empires from popping up over and over and over again. Like that seemed to be like the syndrome of humanity, that the empires pop up, like something bubbles up and it just tries to take over the world, and then something else bubbles up and tries to take over the world, And I think it always goes back to corruption of value. I think once you corrupt the value, when in that case they were just, printing coins, so to speak, or just making that, out of thin air, and sort of leveraging with military and saying, well, it does have value because we're going to kick your ass if you say that that it doesn't, And so like, okay, because you have military power over me, like, what can I do? So it's funny way, like, think about it. There's a Chinese and American, right? And American says, like, hey, can you lend me, $100 $1,000 or something like that. And then, they lend the money, and the guy buys a bunch of weapons, bunch of, cannons, grenades and stuff like that. And then Chinese comes back and says like, hey, so what about that $100,000 I lent you? I said, what about it? And that's what we live in, this type of world. What about it? Like, we're almost 30 trillion in debt in the United States. What about it?
What about it? And then if they keep asking, the Americans say, well, we'll just print more money.
Well, because America made the military in such a way that it's like untouchable. But now, because they can dictate so much, like these countries are revolting because, of course, nobody likes. But hey, going back to nuclear war, right? Now, I want to ask your opinion about one thing. So, it seems to me like in the last 100 years, we were always very aware of how nukes are being controlled by the aliens.
Whoa, that was a bombshell to drop.
Yeah.
So you gotta unpack that one.
Okay, I'm gonna unpack that one. So anyway, the point is that there are higher beings that are looking after us. That's the theory, right? And on many occasions when they were doing the drills, the training, or maybe even actually trying to do it, who knows? That on these occasions, every single time, some lights would show up and shut down the systems, deactivate the nuclear warheads, and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that the governments kind of know that the nukes is just for show because it's not going to be allowed to be used.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting. Just a quick side note on disclosure. I've been following this for years, and now during the COVID pandemic, we've seen so much disclosure. And as you're saying, or indicating, I think governments all over the world have known for years, but it's been kind of ridiculed in the public light, even though all these documents released are showing that they've known. So I think it's very interesting to watch real time how they are disclosing this and pretending like nothing happened. And I think it just provides a lot of perspective for a lot of other things. What else is a government really good at hiding that will be disclosed later? Like, for instance,
absolutely.
How, information on medicine and, all these things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So back to the aliens and nukes. Yeah, I've seen, it's like leaked documents from the Navy, right? That were like, they had
CIA documents.
CIA, the Navy. Yeah. So I think it should definitely be investigated, because if that is not aliens, it's like some foreign power which is able to disable nuclear warheads.
Right. What we'll call them aliens. I mean, people have different names depending on their upbringing. Like they may say it's angels, aliens, higher, light beings, whatever we want to call them. But the theory is that we're not alone here, and we are just like babies in a crib trying to grow up and trying to learn to walk. And they're trying to make sure that, we don't fall out of the crib and smash our head against the floor,
Yeah, I think that's could be possible. And the question is, how far can they be stretched? How much can they keep doing that, right? Like, if you have a baby that keeps running towards the wall and hitting its head, at some point, you can't do anything.
But you know what the thing about the babies? They never give up trying to learn to walk. That's something to learn from a baby, They never give up trying to learn to walk. How many times they fall back on their butts and fall over and whatever? Lots of times. Get hit too. Still trying to walk. Yeah. Relentless.
For sure. Yeah. And the alien technology thing is also very interesting, because how long will it take before we have that kind of technology? If we look at the rate of exponential growth of all kinds of things, whether it's AI or even what's the innovation that's happening with rocket propulsion and SpaceX and communications, there's so much happening. I can imagine within 20 to 30 years we won't even be able to recognize our world compared to what it is today. Speaking of
unrecognizable world, what do you think of virtual reality? And what are the kind of prospects with the virtual reality? And then, of course, I want you to add, combine that with altered states of consciousness?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So I've thought a lot about this, and a teacher, or what should we say, a guy we both follow,
Master. Yes.
called Thomas Campbell.
Sensei Tom.
Sensei Tom.
Yes.
Yes.
For sure.
He's talked a lot about this, and what I think to summarize what he says is that virtual reality will teach us a lot about our reality, because our reality is virtual too. Our reality is a simulation, and when you enter a VR world, it's also a simulation that's generated by a computer, so you're not really interacting with that reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is going to be one of the biggest technological innovations or breakthroughs in terms of impact.
Change of consciousness in people.
Exactly. When you have really, because right now we don't have mainstream adoption of VR. We're still not there. Like, the technology is too cumbersome. It's not really that nice enough to use, and so on. But it will happen, right? At some point, just because it's more convenient, I think. Yeah. It'll become everyday use.
Right.
And I think that's going to mess with us on profound levels, both in good and bad ways.
Yes, I think the closer those virtual realities going to become as real life, the more the penny is going to drop. They're going to go like, whoa, what's the difference? How do I know I'm not in virtual reality already?
Yeah.
You are. And then would mean, then what am I, like, is this a character, an avatar that I'm controlling? Is this the character that I picked up when I booted this game?
Exactly.
And then if that's so, like, what does that mean?
Yeah. And, I think a lot of people who are used to doing inner work or maybe psychedelics, they've already been thinking about this, right? Because they've been confronted with that, fact up front. They're like, okay, so I'm having this altered state of consciousness, or I'm viewing my ego or myself differently than before. What does that mean? What is my view of life? I think a lot of people haven't had that experience yet. So
yeah. Imagine lucid dreaming, okay, and virtual reality at the same time, okay? So your lucid dreams are being controlled by the virtual reality, and your intent and thoughts in lucid dreaming affects the game. Now, this is something that I really want to see, and I really think it's inevitable that it will be, because all these sensory things that we're trying to make your body feel in the virtual reality will be impossible to do. How we're gonna specifically reproduce the blow of wind across the hair of your forearm, right? That sensation is not going to be. It's going to have to be in the head, right? So it's supposed to be elicited there, and of course, how do you elicit that type of sensation? Go in a lucid dreaming state, and then have that experience. You will feel it. You will feel everything. It's going to be very tangible. So when you're playing these shooter games, you're going to have to think twice before loading up that game, or maybe play some, different type of game where just like walk in the park.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's so exciting because, we've also talked a lot about how you can use biohacking devices to induce altered states of consciousness, including states that would help you have lucid dreams, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're immersed in a VR world, and you can have, your whole reality flicker at a certain frequency, or be synchronized with certain music or beats that bring you into an altered state. It's so much more powerful than most of the things we have available today. So that can get you into that kind of state very quickly.
Yes. And, it will be mind interaction with the machine and playing the game with the machine. I mean, we're already probably doing. But you see what I'm saying? Yeah. The computer will not be connected to you at all. You're going to be in an altered state of consciousness, and that is how you interact with the computer. And computer is going to interact with you, meaning creating the environments that you want to experience, right? Because when you're lucid dreaming, have you ever tried to create the environment that you want to like walk through, and it stays perfectly? It's super hard to do.
Yeah, I can't do that. Yeah,
but if I were to have linked up to the machine that it draws these things for me, and it creates the game, it creates that environment for me. It's not just like black and nothing. Now I'm moving through stuff, experiencing stuff, because it's not just generated by my brain, but the machine as well. Not brain, sorry, like my consciousness, because at that point brain doesn't really matter.
Yeah, Yeah, I can definitely see that. And yeah, I would be concerned about one thing, which would be, do we, like, if you spend half your time playing computer games and you're just used to looking into a screen, after weeks or months or maybe years, it's going to start dulling your senses, right? You're going to become your senses are going to become less alive to the outside world, the wind, the other sensations, the intricate sounds that nature makes, the body language of other people. And so I think the same can happen in the VR world, which would be one of my concerns about it. I would be concerned that people lose their ability, they become less embodied. They lose their ability to feel the fullness of their being, which is also embodied. It's also in your body. It's in your thoughts and your emotions, and it's also your ability to visualize and have your own thoughts.
Right.
And so I have a good story about this, a very interesting story. This was even 6-7 years ago. I was at a festival, and this was a hippie festival in Romania. But I don't know how I ended up there. But I met an Israeli guy he's a musician, and he was also what do you call it, he was running a orchestra, kind of an orchestra for young
composer.
Composer. That's the word I was looking for. And so he was like 20 or 22, but he was very inspiring. And one of his jobs besides doing that was he would be paid by parents to go teach their children how to have an imagination. Wow. Imagine that.
Imagine that. Yeah. I haven't been coached in that, so I can't.
No, I mean, I don't think you need it, but all these kids that grew up with iPads and computers and and TV and
right.
They learn that.
Then what's the difference between that and imagination? Then is this what you're saying? How can you be creator? Because you have to imagine, but if everything is created for you, where is the creation? I think that's why the creative games, that's why is becoming more and more popular, because then now you can use the imagination and say, well, I can imagine to build this, and then you go out and do it.
Yeah.
And those the games develop imagination.
Yeah, and Minecraft is a good example. I think that's a very good game for that. But it's still within a limited context, right? So it's still within a defined set of playing rules. So it would depend on the game. But I think that, that could be a problem, if in the long run, if you just look at people's ability to, enjoy life, have fun, but also at a macroeconomic level, be innovative, but at a very, very fundamental level, your ability to imagine, even outside any game, whether it's a social game with other people or a technological VR game, your ability to imagine is very closely tied to your sovereignty, to your ability to be an independent human being, because you are the one imagining your life and thus self-directing.
Right, correct. You're the one, I love it. You're the one who, if you are imagining the world, it wasn't being told to you. It came from within you. And you're saying that whatever comes from within you is the shizzle. It's like the most ultimate thing that you can create here. And I really believe that. I really believe that every single person, every one of us here, are to create something very, very quite specific, that we're here to leave the message of some sort. And if we're going in pursuit of that message, then we are in a state of bliss. We're enjoying it. We're letting go of the wheel, so to speak. We're just going along for a ride. And when you know that it's a ride, then you just, why worry? It becomes the most irrational thing ever to worry. And of course, when I say it becomes, I mean when it reaches your level, the being level, where it just doesn't pop up because you are at the being level, completely absorb that and experience how it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point.
Thank you. So I want to talk about this technology. You explained the imagination, but now let's talk about technology that sets people free in terms of, for example, an altered state or the way of life, the way of living, right? I know people use the enlightenment as a gauge and saying, well, this person is enlightenment, this person is not. I think it's more like a spectrum, and we're all on a journey. And I think we're measuring it based on how are we present in the present moment in our hearts. How much of the time are we? So if we're like, 0% of the time, then, well, you're just neurotic mess, And then if you go like 20, 30, 40, now you're enjoying life at the balanced level. And then 60, 80, and that's when you are most of the time in a really enjoyable state and digging everything, like not avoiding any kind of emotions. When I say enjoyable state, I don't mean avoiding negative emotions. I mean that you're accepting the negative and the positive as one and the same, and you can derive the same satisfaction from them.
Yeah.
And then you no longer hide from life. You understand there's going to be, we're all mortal in this body, right? So people are going to die. So there's going to be a lot of crying, there's going to be grieving, but that's all good. I mean, this is part of life. And, if you allow yourself to grieve and not hold anything back, it just passes by. And then you're good again. And that's what allows you to be more in the present moment. And when you're more in the present moment, the more you have other realities opening up. And maybe not even being afraid of death anymore.
Yeah, I can definitely recognize that. So I meditated for like 13 years. And it was only about 5, 6 years ago, when I started working with my current teacher, that I realized I was meditating in a way where I wasn't really accepting what I was feeling. And I was realizing how that was a huge limitation, and how that was keeping me not just from being happy, and being fully healthy, even physically, but also just, as you're saying, experiencing other realms, let's say, other ways of experiencing reality.
Mm-hmm.
And, we live in a culture right now, which is, there's this idea that happiness is just, it's like a kind of joy where we're just constantly experiencing positive emotion, like elation, like if you just won a lottery ticket, or you just, I don't know, your favorite team just won in like football or something.
Right. You chasing that,
Exactly.
and that is a mistake.
That is a mistake, because there's actually, as I'm sure you've experienced, there's much more profound and, I don't know, on every level, deeper experiences of, I don't even want to call it a happiness. It's just a kind of contentedness. It's a kind of fulfillment that you would typically hear about when you talk about enlightenment, or these monks who reach these states that are characterized by peace, or a kind of bliss that emerges from within, that's intrinsic. It's not extrinsic. It's not based on whatever happens in the outside world.
Right.
I think that's it.
It's derived from within by modifying your own consciousness. Yeah, I think so.
And so that's also just so important, nowadays, because we live in such, this is a cliche to say, but it seems pretty true. We live in a world that's changing more and more quickly.
Right.
So there's very little stability. I can see in my own life the goals that I had, when I would set goals many years ago, I could have these goals for a longer time before I would need to like rebalance my sub goals, or kind of change my plan.
Right.
And now it's just like all the freaking time,
Okay.
like I need to change my way of relating to a present moment,
I
my
see.
expectations. I met so many people who feel the same way.
Right. Because the uncertainty is so high that you just have to go with it, right? And you're saying that at first you were able to plan a lot, and the further you go, the less you can plan, and the more spontaneous you have to be.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's not even your choice if you just want to stay on that balance and feeling good.
Exactly. And you can't expect things to work out. Inevitably, things will not work out the way you want them to, but then other possibilities emerge more quickly.
For the better. It doesn't work out for the better. It always doesn't work out for the better, I think.
Yeah. And if you're not in the present moment, you don't necessarily see that. And I think that's also the key. So it's kind of a paradox, because if you actually want to be happy, you're also going to get more of that extrinsic happiness, because you learn to navigate in the now, like a super present warrior. You have like a samurai sword, right? It's like a samurai or a warrior who's in the moment, constantly
facing the life.
Noticing everything in the environment, every minute change, and then being more equipped to deal with the situation.
Yeah. it's I like to compare it to, like as if you're tripping on LSD, but not in the sense that you have no control of it. Like you're in a altered state in the present moment where you can play with reality any way you want, and it's always fun, like you could experience something for the first time all the time, and how fun is that? So so I think that if I suppose if somebody wants to compare what would be like to always what is like being enlightened, I would say that is a little bit like being in that present moment of LSD, when it brings you like to like pure present moment. From there you can see things that you weren't able to see before, hear things, feel things that you weren't able to see before. Like all these venues open up when you're on LSD. And I think when you're living a pure present moment, that's how you experience the world all the time.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. And I might have tried LSD. I might have tried other things, and I think it's interesting to experience how there's a difference between how different compounds can affect your consciousness. Right. I mean,
Yes.
There's a difference between how DMT affects you and how LSD affects you. And at least DMT is endogenous, right? So it's produced by the body more readily, where LSD, I don't know of any corresponding compound within the human body.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I've had vastly qualitatively different experiences.
Yeah.
But I think what you're alluding to is that once you're in the state, you're opened up, and you're like, it's like my experience has been, had I tried LSD, which, okay, I guess
gets out of the bag
to have done, but it's like you're opened up to a kind of intelligence that that was hard to access before. And you're present, you're enjoying the richness, and you're connecting more with other people in a good way, unless you're having a bad experience.
Exactly. And not only you can feel other people, like literally you can feel their vibe, but also sense a little bit of love and just make them a little bit more at ease. That's what a lot of times people go see these gurus just because it just makes them feel good. Like that energy vibe is that palpable, that's transmittable. So so I think that's another benefit of present moment. I mean, think about if anybody would write a book right now, the benefits of present moment. I think it would be like trilogy, or maybe even more, or maybe like 10 chapters.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly, and as you're saying, I think drugs. I don't want to even call them drugs, but psychedelics or entheogens, they have, they can show people like the present moment or these experiences that would ordinarily take decades of practice.
Right.
I've even heard these stories of Zen monks that were meditating for decades, and then they were taken to an ayahuasca experience, and the comment was literally like, "Damn it, I wish I tried this before." Right.
Yeah.
So
monks say that.
Oh yeah, I've heard this on several occasions, and
that they feel like they wasted time.
I don't know if that's how it was said.
Look. I want to pose this question for you right now. Now, do you believe that effort on meditation, just directly with nothing, right? Maybe some guidance from somebody else, and just meditating and trying to get these states of consciousness, like without anything else. And let's say take the devices that affect your electromagnetic field transcranially, the ones that can change the state like in a few minutes, right? So now you compare that effort going down that path, and then you can compare a machine that can kind of show you and put you in these states real quick, and you would, I assume, you would learn pretty quick to get to these states yourself. So do that person who did not go on that journey of long ass road and just went through the technological enlightenment, did that person lose on anything?
So in my view, enlightenment is kind of a destination and a permanent state that you land in. So it's also very hard to define. It's defined differently by a lot of people. So it's a very problematic term. But also, I'm not sure I've yet to see whether these machines could help you get to a permanent state of enlightenment. I guess it would need to be part of a practice.
So we don't have a person who got to that point technologically?
Well, I think we've seen examples of very accomplished meditators who use these machines, and then they can say, this snapped me into that kind of enlightened state straight away.
Okay, that's very interesting. So you're saying that we're yet to have a person who was technologically enlightened?
I don't know. I have no idea, but I've not heard about it. So I don't know if you've heard about that.
I haven't heard about it. I think we are still yet to have.
But if you consider psychedelics a technology,
it's a very pioneer, cutting edge field.
If you consider psychedelics a technology, like a tool, if you will, outside ourselves that can help us achieve certain ends, then I've heard of a lot of instances of people achieving some kind of enlightened states or awakened states that persisted. And so there's a whole body of research on that, which is very interesting.
Okay.
In terms of, so it's just the term enlightenment in itself is very ambiguous, right? So I wrote 1 or 2 papers on this, and the problem is the definition, right? So you have so many different traditions which define it differently, and you also have cultures where, that define this word differently, or languages. So we got to get on the same page on that. And even before we get, and when we get on the same page of what it even means, like what are the criteria, it's also just such a subjective state. So a lot of the stuff we know in neuroscience today is because we have people who are entering into states of meditation, for instance, and then they're reporting back their phenomenological experience. So their subjective experience of what is happening in their minds. And then the scientists, the neuroscientists, the fMRI experts or whatever, they're looking at the screens or looking at the data, and they're saying, okay, that corresponds to those frequencies or that brain region. And so that's kind of how we know what we know. So I think that we are far away from it being a better tool necessarily than some of the alternatives we have, because it's also very dependent on how we code the technology.
Right. Yeah.
But I think there's also.
But you think it's going to technology is going to overtake, in this case, nature, right? Psychedelics.
Yeah, I have no idea. I think it's a very, very interesting question, which goes back to some of these ethical issues that we discussed before, right? About freedom of the mind and what is even the purpose of everything if we can just bypass our own personal learning journeys, and land in a state like that. I think it's Brave New World where you're given a pill or something where that's possible as well. Yeah. And so the question is, do we even want that? And will we have people who are actually healthy? Yeah. Maybe they feel healthy internally, but are they actually healthy to others, right?
Right.
We all know people
that's also true.
Yeah, we all know people who are spiritually bypassing. Right?
Yeah. Okay. So I think in this case that I don't think technology that changes your states of consciousness going to do anything with your growing up. I think you still need to face your own stuff. You need to face your traumas. You still got to go through the healing journey. It's just that it's going to be there available for you if you want to. I think this is what we're going to see. And then we're going to see like all the people who do want to going to get access to it. Right, and all the people who are still sort of on the fence and still want to play their ego games and so on, all these like revenge and proving something games, then they can do that too. And I think that's what we're going to get. We're going to get the freedom of choice of our own consciousness in the direction we want to take. Because right now, if we want to take a certain direction, we're not at the states of consciousness where that's possible. But but that will be available. And I think it will be just like we all have a right to water right now, right? It's a human right. I think it's also going to be a human right to have access to altered states.
Yeah, I agree with that. And let's hope it is a choice that we will be able to make ourselves, because right now or until now it's de facto been not possible legally for us to make that decision, at least in terms of psychedelics. Yeah. And I think we might, we talked about this yesterday, we might see that the government or the authorities or whatever are regulating these mind machines or whatever technology that will help us reach these states, or regulating out of existence, or saying, okay, only doctors can allow, can prescribe you this or whatever. And there's a real danger to that.
There is. So don't you think that this is probably one of the biggest problem in the world right now, that just we don't have the access to different states of consciousness. And then if that would be addressed, then everything else will sort itself out.
It could be, and this goes back to, I don't know how much well, let's start from a different place. It is, I think, if you take a first principles thinking approach, I think it's actually the most fundamental issue we have in society today. It's how do we as human beings relate to the world? What is the quality of our consciousness, of our internal world, right? Are we happy? Are we angry? Are we traumatized? And does that affect our ability to do anything, to have good relationships or make sense of the world and so on?
Right.
And, we also have, I think people want to grow. At the end of the day, they want to grow. They want to be better human beings. They want to be happy. But at the same time, there's just so much working against us, right?
Right.
Like I think in the United States, you guys work like at least on average 50-hour work weeks, right? So we're super stressed. You have there's all these, it used to be TV, now it's social media. We've all seen the social dilemma. So we're being hacked literally by algorithms, AI that will start knowing us better than we know ourselves.
Right.
So I think that the component of choice starts becoming tricky because even if part of us wants to, we might not even know that we want to go there. Okay.
So it becomes this dichotomy between, man versus machine kind of thing. And where the technology, you are being used by technology and you don't even know it. We have these scenarios, right? And then we have the other scenarios where people use technology. Technology is being used for their own evolution, for their own conscious evolution. So I think we have this sort of interesting paradox that we all depend on each other's evolution, right? Like if technology evolves, so I can get to evolve. And then if I evolve, technology gets to evolve too. So we're sort of like in this ching, ching, ching.
Yeah.
And if that's so, maybe it's just a natural flow. Maybe this is how it is. Maybe that there's some people need to contribute to the machines. And other people, machines contribute to people, right? And so that in a society, it will appear that there's these people who believe that they need to work 50 hours a week. They don't have a reality where they don't need to work at all, and they always need to consume, right? They always have anxieties about more, never ending, that trying to stay afloat, keeping up with the Joneses, right? And keeping your head above the water and like living like that. Right, but you with your all energy, machine gets to use your energy. That's what benefits. You don't, like you waste your energy for your own instead of your evolving yourself and growing and following your own path and journey. That energy is being used by the machine.
Right.
And it's not that the machine is evil; it's that you gave up the possibility for that to happening.
Yeah, and it depends on how it all unfolds. I think one of the core characteristics of human beings is that we alter our environment, right? So since we became Homo sapiens, we used stone tools, we used fire, we used all these things to increase our chances of survival or reproduction or whatever. And now technology is just that. Technology has greatly accelerated in tandem with our, liberal economies that need this, that need growth in order to protect the, societies and nation states and get us ahead and eliminate suffering and so on. And so technology, the technology we're building now in terms of social media platforms, communication technologies, VR, and so on, it's just, I see it as an extension of that, right? So how will we relate to it, and how will we change it in a way that it doesn't limit us and that we don't use it kind of in warfare with each other, which is what is literally happening right now. Yeah. So I think it will depend on that. And so when you look at the change of technology, there's also been a kind of a change in human consciousness at the same time. Yeah. I was reading a book or article by a leading researcher in this field, and he had found that since the 1990s, when the internet became a thing, so there was widespread adoption of the internet, there was also increase in people who landed in these awakened or enlightened states. And I think that's very interesting because conventionally people think of this as, as personal improvement or personal development or this awakening that we're talking about. They think of it apart from technology, right? But this, if this is true, I haven't seen the study on it, but if it's true, it's also a clear indication that technology can help us, right, for the better, and we should also start thinking about it more in those terms.
Right.
So we develop side by side with it. We develop the technology helps us develop, and that's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I see it the same way. And it's sort of a bit of a dance. Maybe right now the balance is a bit off, right? And we do need a lot more people use technology for their own evolution and benefit and so on, right? Rather than feeding that machine. Because like the way I see it is if you get to experience anything you want through technology, right? Anything you want through technology. And then why would anybody do anything if not to experience something? Like, why do you need $2 billion in your bank account? Like, to look at the numbers, you can experience that. You can experience what is it like buying anything with that money. You can experience that. So when you can experience that, then maybe we're not that much attached to this anymore. It doesn't become the axis of our decisions and our way of life. And it's just that's how I think that it's going to sort itself out.
That's a very good point. Yeah. So people will end up just craving realness,
experience of it. Everybody always wants to experience. That's why you want there's lots of money and whatever is for, because then you can experience. But when you can experience something that's indistinguishable, then all of that loses the appeal and the power.
Yeah, let's see.
And then technology becomes something that is of value, and technology becomes of value to a human.
Yeah.
Rather than some sort of systems that we're trying to build, like these rigged monetary systems that run the so-called capitalism, which is not even capitalism. I don't know how you call it, but some sort of zombie capitalism. And creating this, and as a consequence, having these wars, right? Why do we need wars? Because you got something I don't. I want that experience of it. I want to have that reality, But when you can have any reality you want, then you'll calm down with it because it's available. You'll be like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would be the best case scenario. I hate to be pessimistic, but when I look at history and how human beings are and how they developed in societies and so on, I feel like there will still be some excuse to go to war.
See?
They're going to be like, okay, so we still need our supply of VR machines, so we need more money. Let's invade the neighboring country.
Yeah,
something, or I don't
maybe,
know, but it could also be that scenario, and I think it will help a lot of people also, for sure.
But one thing I know is that white always win. When we talk about this, always running away from darkness, right? Thinking that dark will win. But I think it's not. The secret of this game is that it's never going to happen. That it would always going to be, because if it was, then there would not be evolution. There would not be progression. We would not see, things evolving. Then it would mean it would extinct. And because of that fact that evolution does exist, that it is improving and growing and all that, just because of that fact, you can relax, because you can see that it's all for the better. All for the better all the time, even though it seems like a boogie is going to get you.
Yeah. I think a lot of it just boils down to the fear of death. Are you afraid of dying? What is your perspective?
Are you afraid of dying?
Well, after having a few of my experiences in altered state, shall we say, I don't feel like I'm afraid of dying. I routinely expose myself to situations where one would typically feel the fear of death. I went parachuting, a couple months, 2 months ago, or I'm in dangerous places or situations or whatever. And I can't identify that anymore.
Right.
But if we go back to the what will happen, like at a societal level, if you look at the big empires and civilizations that we've had,
Mm-hmm.
all of them have collapsed. All of them have ended.
Yes.
And now we're sitting here, what should we say, 60, 70 years after World War II. But it's a very, very, very short time, like in human history.
Right.
And there's so many risk factors present in the world today compared to just 20 years ago. We're talking about exponential technology. Nuclear warheads used to be the primary concern. Now it's global warming. Now it's AI.
We always
robotics warfare.
Dude,
or
we
like
always
biological agents.
Yeah.
Right?
We
So-
always give a name to it. Like we humans cannot live in peace. Like they have to create a boogie monster, and then we slap the label on it. And I think it's just a natural thing that the humans do, but I think it's the humans that are in a process of evolution yet. I think there is a point in time in evolution where you no longer pretend that the boogie monster is getting you all the time, and you don't need to run away from all this nonsense. You expect things to happen the way they happen, right? And bad shit happens, but you don't run away from it anymore. It's just a part of life. You accept it.
Yeah.
You don't have to create, if you, and this is another thing that I really want to talk about, is that sometimes if you take that away from people, that fear, they don't have a ground to stand on, and that's what freaks them out, that they can't imagine life without fear anymore, where they can just be in the present moment. So by taking away the fear, because they have that addiction to that fear, there is that resistance. They just don't want to let it go, like, because I don't know, like, that's my certainty.
Right.
I'm certain there's always going to try to get me. But now that you tell me that I have to live a different way, I'm holding on to it.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and so true, right? Like that's just more fear holding on to the fear.
Right.
Literally.
Exactly.
That's what's so crazy about it all. And
It's so interesting how it's just like you cannot like escape it that way. The more you run away from fear, the more fear it generates. Like it's genius code.
it's crazy, yeah, and it's just self-propagating.
Yeah.
And if you're around fearful people, it becomes even more, and people make each other fearful.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
we're seeing that right now with the
But then
COVID.
if you try to avoid these fearful people, now you're afraid of fearful people. Like it, you see what I mean? You just have to okay with everything.
It's my last remaining fear, fearful people.
Yeah, fearful people. Yeah, no, I think it's more to do with the direction of your compass.
Yeah.
If you direct your compass away from fear, then that's the way you live your life. But if you direct the compass towards fear, and you're just totally okay to face it when it comes up without trying to avoid it, then the life kind of changes. And then the secret is that every time you go through the darkness of the fear, there's always end of it, and there's always absolute bliss and light. That's the secret. That's the huge secret. And it's like jumping out of an airplane. That would be like a light metaphor of what it's like. Just facing the fear, the excitement. That's what you get, and the
Right.
thrill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I believe I read this I think I read this in a study recently, that people in the Western world, there's a higher preponderance, there's a higher tendency to towards depression and low levels of happiness. And one of the reasons seems to be that we live such comfortable and sheltered lives.
Right.
Right. So if I travel to India and South America and like these different countries in West Africa, and I've, it made such a lasting impression on me to see these people with almost nothing,
Mm-hmm.
but with a radiance of, happiness and aliveness
Yeah.
that I would not see back in Copenhagen,
There
Denmark.
you go. There you
And
go. I'm getting chills.
yeah, and they have something else, right? Like they have less security, they have less money, they have less items or technology. But on the other hand, they have community,
Mm-hmm.
and they have, things are very real. They have to be in the present moment. They have to engage with what is. Otherwise, it's fucking over.
Yeah.
So there's this other kind of urgency and aliveness that can push you to just deal with your fears, to just confront life, to feel life.
It pushes you in the present moment.
I feel like this is not a generalization, but I have seen this a lot. And there, so I think when we live these sheltered lives, which we do, a lot of us do, and we don't, push the boundaries, that's when more fear allows to accumulate.
Right.
And I think that's why a lot of people increasingly are becoming drawn to Buddhism or Stoic philosophy as well, because if you follow these, true to their core, it's about, well, be with life, be with what is, be true to what is.
Right.
Don't shelter yourself from your surroundings. Just engage it, with the fullness of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. That's going to be a nice clip. Or what time do we have? We can still go on. Man, I'm having fun. Are you having fun?
Yes.
Yeah, this is awesome. Yeah, and we're making some good clips for people to listen to. Some good sound bites.
Nice.
Like some of them really cool. So yeah, I think that was a very nice way of putting it. That there's nothing really much to do. That is like might be the first domino is just to face life, and that is your path to the enlightenment. And that you don't need to go and see the guru or anything like that. And all it takes is just face life fully, and it will take you to the best and the shortest path to enlightenment, if that's what you want.
Exactly. I think at the end of the day, if we're able to stay there, if we're able to stay in the realness, yes. Yeah, we notice this quality in ourselves, this deeper intelligence or inspiration, which can guide us in every moment.
Yeah.
We don't need other people to tell us necessarily. We don't need thoughts. It's actually right there. We're connecting to the fullness, also our subconscious.
Yes. It has so much power and peace and serenity, and there's so much there, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, and it's a thrilling ride as well. So you get both of the best worlds. You get that ecstasy, and then you also get the thrill. And the thrill comes from going through life and facing fears. That's what the thrill is. It's facing life. So there you go. So the bliss, it consists of the thrill on one side, right? And then well-being on the other side. You combine those two together in a perfect balance, you experience bliss. So therefore, any kind of emotion, positive, negative, grief, love, they're all can be packed into one giant feeling called bliss. And we can experience life like that.
We can. And, I think the only and the biggest challenge is that we forget. It's forgetfulness.
Remember.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
see, this is what this Ram Dass guru said. You know his name. Do you know?
I know Ram Dass, yeah.
Yeah. Ram Dass guru.
Oh, Neem Karoli Baba, right?
Neem Karoli Baba. Okay, so that guy said 3 things. That's the only mantra, if you will, in only 3 words that you ever need to have, is remember, love everyone, and tell the truth.
Exactly.
That's
great. I love that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a very, very important thing there, which is love everyone.
Yeah.
Which alludes to community.
Yeah.
So I routinely go back, and I have a teacher, a Vajrayana teacher, so Tibetan Buddhism, like a tradition of non-duality, and he's a Western guy. He's an American, and in fact, I was just at a retreat with him, and what we're talking about now is very basic,
right?
But it's still so easy to forget. So I went to this retreat, and the only thing we were doing was just feel your whole being, feel all your surroundings. Yeah. And your radiance, as he calls it. So who you are at the same time. Yeah. And when you can succeed in doing that at the same time, you in a which I say in a very bare way, it's hard to explain, then that's when you're in non-duality, right? That's also where you can access the bliss, what they call rigpa, which is this blissful state of peace and
pure present moment is that state.
It can be, I think. It doesn't depend.
Well,
right?
I think when we really call mathematically present moment, when the time stops, that's by definition you no longer in time space.
Right. So the point I was trying to make though is that having other people who remind us of that. You know, whether it's community, people where we're helping each other, or just at the very least helping each other by being ourselves, by doing our own work, right? Cleaning up ourselves
Excellent.
and showing up.
Yeah.
And having teachers or people who are inspiring us in that direction. I think it's so important.
Yeah, so I think we lost one of the important knowledge in our evolution, and I see some indigenous tribes still do it, right? And now we are becoming aware about things like gene keys, human design, and how the hexagrams in I Ching, and how all of our personality and soul even is mathematically programmed and structured, right? So, and we get to have information about ourselves that we before we never had, where like not only I can have information about me, but you can have information about me too, and I can have information about you too. So I know what is your soul purpose, so I can be considerate of that, and you know what my soul purpose, you considerate of that, and that's how you support each other, being in that razor blade of life, so to speak, in a perfect present moment, and not being snapped out because other people are supporting you on your journey and you supporting them on their journey. And when I say journey, I mean very specific purpose and mission and meaning that we all have here to do. And only when we deviate from that, that's when we lose present moment. And that's I want to talk to you about this, like, and compare that with the indigenous species where they had these types of shamanic knowledge about people, and then they would give names based on that, right? They would understand what kind of character they're playing within their tribe, and no one would be confused because, you know, if you're, breaking in horses and you're great at that, you have no doubt that this is what you're here for. You know, you're playing that game, you're playing that character. And I think right now we're not playing our own characters.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We've lost touch with that.
Yeah.
We're playing characters in corporations.
Yeah, pretending to be corpus.
Being assigned roles by these big bureaucracies.
Right.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's also being surrounded by people who really know you.
Yeah.
Right? And do you know Brené Brown?
Brené Brown?
Yeah. So she has a very popular TED Talk. She talks about the importance of vulnerability and community, which is a big cause of suffering in our society. Yeah. And I think especially in the US, people are much less willing to be vulnerable, and that is when people become disconnected and lonely.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
And so I feel that a big part of it is people coming out there, as Ram Dass says, truth, being honest with each other, loving each other for who you are. Yeah. And that will just help so many people. And then you also feel seen and you feel supported in your own journey, right?
How strange that is that vulnerability, as you call it, and just being true you is something that people may be afraid of. Like, and the thing is that the least thing to be afraid of, because that's what will bring you the best possible experience. Exactly. Right? And it's like such an irrational fear. You know, I don't think any fear is irrational. The only rational thing to do about the fear is excitement. Like, I think that's the only thing that you can rationally do. And that excitement is fear being faced.
Oh, the excitement that results from facing your fears.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the paradox in it all, right? Like, if you really deconstruct life and everything, fear is irrational. Now, not any kind of fear, right? I mean, there's fears of, okay, if I step off this cliff, I might die, right? Well, that makes sense.
Physical fears are totally rational.
Yeah.
We got to listen to them. See, and okay, I want to ask you a question now. Look at the difference between the physical fear and emotional fear, and how they're both from a different worlds, but we confuse them.
Yeah.
So I want you to comment on that.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to the rapid change we've undergone, not just recently as a society, but in the last 50,000 years of human history, right? Our bodies are still so primal. So our minds, and I think you know this very well, right? They're still not very good at differentiating between what is physical fear and what is emotional fear, or even what is emotional fear that is there because if I say this thing wrong or do this thing incorrectly, I might be like thrown out of the tribe.
Yeah.
Right. I might be left on my own.
Yeah.
Which would not happen in our modern capitalist
Right.
society. Right.
Yeah.
You know.
So then it seems to me that if you are facing fear in physical fear, then you're gonna die. Right? I mean, that's not a good axiom to have. This is not a compass to have, right? And yet, because, like you said, we're still evolving, we have not really detached from that, and we're not really decoupled the emotional fear, because emotional fear is all about going towards fear. It's flipped all other way around, you see?
Mm-hmm.
So we're using the old compass for the new reality. And that's why some people kind of wake up to the fact it's like, whoa, this compass is off. Like, it never brings me, what I really want. And then so we update this axis, this compass of our internal navigation system. We update the internal navigation system, and now that it's pointed more and more towards facing life rather than away from. And then obviously the paradox is, if I do face life, then I'm going to experience all the things that I really want to experience, and that those are sustainable, and that then I'm not afraid of any kind of experience in life ever. I want to experience everything,
Exactly.
So
yeah. So
compass.
we gotta upgrade that navigation system, and our navigation systems used to be compass, right?
Right.
But now they're like Google, Apple Maps.
Yeah,
They're satellites in orbit.
Yeah.
They're us pulling information up on our smartphones, and I think it's a very suitable metaphor also to humans. Like, okay, so we live in a new world now, right?
Yeah.
Just 150 years ago, things would barely change from generation to generation. Now they're changing every month, right? So not only do we need to upgrade our navigation system, we need to find a new kind of navigation system.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's being involved in the moment, but also with our intuitions.
Right.
And being able to tap into that. And
that navigation system that navigation system would need to have a program that is very comfortable with uncertainty.
Exactly.
In the world that we live in, especially now.
Yeah, that's a thing, right? Because if we are afraid, we're going to shy away from stuff.
Yeah.
And that's ironically what's going to land us in more trouble.
Exactly.
Because we won't learn, we won't see the world, we won't even know what's going on.
What a great lesson, man.
Yeah.
Like we're really putting the finger on the button, aren't we? And we just like really massaging it right now.
It's a great sentence right there.
Oh man, what a great information, man. Yeah, but how do we do that now? Okay, well, we talked about all the stuff and we sound so smart now. Okay, let's pat ourselves on the back. The whole shebang.
We don't know shit.
yeah, exactly. Now, how does one actually go around it? How does one say, okay, I want this that you're talking about? How do I do it? Like, what is something that I need to do?
Yeah, so I think if we go back to basics, it's about two things, right? Or several, but let's say it's your internal work, right, that we just talked about. You're working with your fears, you're working with your presence.
Okay, good. Let's talk about that. Like, how does one do that?
Okay, so, where to start? Meditation, mindfulness, being present, right? So there's tons and tons of tools for meditation now that...
Let's say the fear comes up. What do I do?
You stay present with it. So first of all, you learn to meditate. You start with following your breath, and you learn to develop a focus, so that a focus and a groundedness in awareness, because when you're able to focus for several seconds or minutes at a time, you start noticing that there's this groundedness, there's this ground of being behind your thoughts that's always there. And when you can connect more to that, you have like a solid, stable ground to stand on when life throws you shit.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the starting point. Because if you start doing psychedelics, for instance, and you don't have that, you can land in much more confusion and trouble and so on, because you'll have even more intense experiences.
Right.
And you'll be thrown completely out of balance.
Yes.
Same with life, right?
Yes. So you need to know about yourself first of all, and then you also need to make all these altered states and everything about your journey, about your healing journey, about this thing. Like really focus on what is that thing that I'm doing. You know, what is this fear that I have? Like what is this trauma that I have, and so on. And just like looking into this, and it's like,
Exactly.
oh, yeah, and trying to gain tools about how to deal with it and have peace in that, rather than chasing that perfect moment.
Right, and I think there comes the attitude and the intention behind it, right?
Right.
That we remember and that we decide. Actually, it's very, very, very basic, but that it's like, I think, as Sensei Tom would say, I mean, besides awareness, it's like the most basic thing we have is intention, right?
Yeah.
So our sovereign decision to do something, and not just do it, but direct our thoughts and perhaps even direct the universe.
Yeah. So would you say just remember your intent? Maybe just wake up and that's your intent is on the wall.
Yeah, tons of people do this, right?
Yeah.
They have like reminders. I have reminders on my phone sometimes if I need to remember, if I'm trying to reprogram a bad pattern or remind myself to do something more. You know, you can have diaries or journals. A lot of people do that, right? Or go to Tony Robbins seminars.
Right. I like the quote, like all things come together for the better in the end. And like if you just take that view, like then the anxiety just goes, phew, gone. But I'm just giving an example of intent and a view of the world, or even like a master belief that anyone can have to make everything fall into place. If you truly absorb that and you truly live that and you truly experience that is true. Not just saying that, saying it's just reminding yourself to get in that state. It's not the word, it's just like reminding you going there.
And the view is so important, right?
Yeah.
The view, what's our ontology? How do we
yeah.
understand reality? Is
Yeah.
reality inherently good, or is it inherently bad and scary, right?
And that is what's going to determine your reality.
Yeah.
So it's like we get to pick what kind of game we're playing. It's like what kind of game we're loading, what kind of map we're loading, what kind of level. We pick all that stuff.
So what would you say to this? Because this was a kind of a tension or paradox for me for many years. If you have that attitude, you're setting yourself up for more success, right? Ideally, or you would be. But on the other hand, for some people, it might be naive, right?
Okay,
it might be like,
good.
the world is great. It's happy. It's going to help me out, and now I'm going to wander into a slum in like Mexico City.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous place, and I'm going to be fine because I have a trusting attitude to the world.
I'm following my intuition. That I'm not following my brain, I'm following my heart, and just have like a good that is going to take me exactly what I need to experience, and I can just relax. And so I call them master belief, and this is sort of like the inner core truth axiom to you. And again, like when somebody doesn't experience that, and then you say this type of belief, which is like 10 levels above what they experience, then it would be like I can't see that. Exactly. This is now my reality. Like, look, there's proof everywhere. So the first thing is to invite person to take a different master belief and saying that, okay, what if my reality is the way it is because of the belief in the first place? And like, can I be having that type of childish imagination where I could just make things up and enjoy it? Can I do that? Is this or my adult brain does not allow me to be that child again? Right. So if you can get yourself to that imagination where you just imagine yourself and enjoy it just for the sake of it, like, and you let that go. So now I'm experiencing stuff that is closer to that belief, right? And it's bringing me closer and closer to that belief. And then I may also break down that belief into what is a little bit closer. For example, if I don't see that everything is one and I'm in a complete present moment and I'm just, all these different truths, just go with the one that is above yours, just a little better one, right? Don't have to go to the one that is so difficult to believe. But if you go just a slightly better one, you can just gonna keep on improving that truth little by little, and then eventually you're gonna find yourself with that truth that says all good things come to an end for better. And then you're like, yeah, I see it. That was my experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. And that's how a lot of growth works, right?
Yeah.
I think there's also trust. And
Oh,
taking,
yeah.
taking you know, this is very
A lot of faith it requires.
exactly like Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, would say that he talked about taking this. He was an existentialist, and he talked about this very basic concept in life and taking the leap of trust.
Yeah, leap of faith.
Into anything, leap of faith. That's
Leap
right.
of faith.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
And a lot of the time, that's required because it's like a quantum leap, right?
Sometimes you can make a quantum leaps of faith.
Sometimes you'll have to, right?
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of times where you just don't know what's on the other side. And
Yeah,
you
so-
just got to do it. And
Right. It's so interesting that you bring that up because leap is like that metaphor jumping out of the airplane. So much fear before,
right.
no fear after.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then, DMT is a leap of faith as well. Let's just be honest,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, man, that was great. I think it's good. We packed so much information. Do you want to add something to it?
I think we got around a lot of things.
I think we got a lot of things, and really the nuggets of the things too, not just superficial stuff.
Yeah, like it was a very effective conversation.
Yeah.
We talked about some very deep
Yeah.
stuff. And
See, and we didn't plan.
No.
See how it all works.
Exactly.
We use what we basically. What is it? What do you say? We preach what we teach. What?
We walk the talk.
We walk the talk. Let's keep it the walk the talk,
Let's try
man.
it.
I butchered the other one. Man, thanks, Nick. Thanks for coming over.
Cheers.
And I'll see you maybe next time.
I hope so.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
That was great.
That was awesome.